Hey guys, welcome back. This is Blue Forest. So today we're going to do part 2 of the beginner strategy guide. I did part 1 last week. So we're going to pick up where we left off, and we're also going to talk about various game modes. I will give some tips and suggestions for how to approach those and make the most out of the different game modes that we have, as well as things like ranking up and forging, as well as improving as a player. So I do want to start by talking briefly about crystals. So the crystals are similar but somewhat different than they used to be in the old game. And we have the crystals that we accumulate over time, as well as shard crystals that require you to build up shards in order to form full crystals. All right. So obviously we get the daily and the 4-hour crystals, right, which you can pick up gradually as you play. Those are not very good. You're getting things like T1 basic sparks, and you can get low tier mods. You can get revives and repair kits, which can be helpful for things like story missions. If you struggle on the hard lanes, they used to be really good for getting revives for the LOC missions, which we don't have anymore. But if we do get something like that back again, they will be helpful. So in general, just pick up the 4 hours and the dailies over time. They're not going to be amazing, but they might help you out every now and then. I would say in general about crystals, though, that it is generally a good idea to save them up and open them when you need them, okay? Because some crystals do benefit from being opened in bulk, okay? When it comes to something like gold crystals, you can open those whenever you want because gold never expires, but I just tend to save them up and I only open them when I really need to. Because otherwise, we have, mod crystals, and we have bot crystals. We have the shard crystals, we have class bar crystals, things like that, right? Some things, like sparks or etc., do expire. And so you don't want to always open crystals the minute that you get them. You don't have to hoard all of them, but it's generally good practice to save them and open them when you actually need them. Because as I said, some crystals will benefit you from opening in large numbers, okay? I want to talk a little bit about Masteries. I've done videos on Masteries, so you can check those out if you want some in-depth analysis. But I just want to say that you do get a total of 43 Mastery points when you reach level 60, right? So you unlock Masteries, I believe, somewhere around level 15 to 20, and then you get 1 point for every commander level that you increase up to 43. And I just want to say a couple of things. Number one, just like you need lots of Energon for rank ups, you also need lots of Energon for Masteries, and you're going to want to use them. Do not delay on Masteries, okay? Because Masteries are going to significantly increase your bot's abilities, their strengths, their attack, and so forth, okay? They make a big difference, especially when it comes to difficult content, right? And so as you become a better player, as you progress in the game, Masteries will make a big difference. And you really need to save Energon for those Tier 1 and Tier 2 cores. The Masteries that require Tier 2 cores, like Starseeker and some of the others, require thousands of Energon to rank up. And so even though you're going to be using lots of Energon to rank up your bots, you always want to have Masteries in the back of your mind, and don't forget about them, because you want to use them well, and you will want to take advantage of them. Like, don't make the mistake of just forgetting about them and leaving most of your Mastery points unused. They will benefit you in a major way, but you're going to need Energon, and you're going to want to think carefully about the Masteries that you choose to use. And so from there, I want to talk about different game modes. So let's just go ahead and talk briefly about raids. So I've mentioned this in a raid grinding video, and I've talked about base defense. Raids are pretty easy. They're not very complicated. They're predictable, and they are kind of boring, unfortunately, because you're only fighting, 5 bots per raid, and we all know what the mods are. But raids can be beneficial for certain purposes. The downside is that the raid store is very different than it used to be. It used to be a rotating raid store where you'd be able to buy different items every day. I hope that actually comes back, because right now you can only use your raid chips for relics, sparks, and mods. That's it. And one thing that's very unfortunate is that over time, once people have all of the relics that they want, and they have all of their mods up to high sig, which will take a while, but people will get there, there's actually not going to be much of a reason to raid at all, except to buy the occasional mod spark. I don't think they thought this through. Because at least in the old game, you could buy sparks, you could buy energon, you could buy AM kits, which we don't have anymore. I mean, there were some uses for the Rage Store that we just don't have. So I really hope they change the Rage Store. If they don't, though, bear in mind that raiding is only about acquiring resources you need, right? So raid when you need to raid, when you want something, buy it, that's it. Keep your raid chips low so that you're a less attractive target to raid, and don't raid just for the sake of raiding, okay? There's nothing cool about hoarding your raid chips. That's pointless because you're just going to get raided a lot yourself, and you're going to lose a lot of those chips, okay? So if you don't want to be raided a lot, the best thing you can do is don't raid too much yourself. So I do raid, but I don't raid all the time. I raid when I want something, I get it, and then I'm done, okay? And as I've mentioned before, base defense is not that complicated. Raids could end up being a little bit more difficult than they used to be just because we can finally max rank our mods and, we can get SIGs more easily so you can put high SIG bots on your base. But as I've mentioned, your base is about gold generation more than anything. Don't worry about successful base defenses because they won't usually happen, okay? When it comes to arenas, I did do a video on the fact that arenas have been nerfed because a couple of them have. Unfortunately, we only have 4 arenas running right now. We have the Spark Arena, the SIG Arena, the Resource Bounty, and Overlord's Favor. And both Overlords and the Resource Bounty have been nerfed. Overlords went from bad to terrible. Resource Bounty went from pretty good to not so good. The Spark Bounty running right now, as well as the SIG Arena, are both still pretty good. And the milestones max out at 350,000 points, which does not take long to finish. So, by all means, go ahead and do arenas, but I would not spend too much time on them because the rank rewards are not very good and nobody's going to care about your rank. Like, don't spend half your day doing arenas trying to get millions of points so you get top rank. I mean, there are much better uses of your time in this game than arenas. I really hope they give us a few more arenas with good rewards, but we have no idea if that's going to happen. One thing I will talk about in a few minutes when it comes to improvement, though, is that arenas will be good. They are a good training ground for improvement as a player because the stakes are low, and if you lose a round, it doesn't really matter. You just start over again. But we'll talk about that in a moment. So arenas are okay, but like I said, they've been nerfed. I really hope they do not nerf the remaining arenas, and I really hope they give us some new ones, but we just will have to wait and see. When it comes to the story, this is the one thing that is actually being updated, meaning the story is the one bit of sort of new content that we're getting because we don't have the time slides anymore. We don't have any unique special missions, right? We have the gauntlets, but we haven't been getting anything else yet. And we have 6 acts as opposed to 4 in the old game. And as you know, if you've been doing the story, the rewards are pretty good, very helpful for things like rank ups. And the content of the story is getting progressively more difficult. Now, one thing I like that they have done is the fact that they have made one lane easy in every story mission, right? So if I go in here right now and I want to start the story mission, I will see that, the lane with Scorp right here is much easier than some of the other lanes. You can't see him right now, but, he has a, 1800 rating or whatever. The other lanes are going to be much more difficult. And I'm really glad they did that because it means that newer players, less experienced players can get through at least the completion level of the story. And so if you are a newer player and you're building your roster and so forth, you can go ahead and do the easy lane in every mission, get the completion rewards, and then gradually work through the rest of the story because the story will be here indefinitely. You don't have to rush through it. You can do it a week from now or months from now. It doesn't matter when you explore the story, okay? But the story is very worth doing, and like I said, it's the only truly new content that we're actually getting at the moment, okay? I do want to mention the special missions real quick, right? We have the gauntlets, which I've talked about. Those are really good, particularly for bot chips. You unlock the gauntlets over time. And then we have Fog of War. Now, Fog of War does seem to be disappearing for a week, including this week, whenever the Spark Arena is running, and then it comes back, and hopefully that stays the case. Fog is very useful to run, particularly for the two hardest lanes to get those T4 and T5 resources, and you get a lot of gold, XP, and ore. So Fog is something very worthwhile to do when you have the mission energy, you have the time. Just run it gradually because you will accumulate those sparks and get those very helpful resources. I would like to see some other special missions come in because the gauntlets are a one-time thing. They're very good, especially things like the Windblade Gauntlet and the Grimlock Gauntlet. But once you're done with them, you're done with them, right? You can't get more rewards. So hopefully we do see more special missions coming in the future, but we'll just have to see. And I did also do a video on the daily missions, particularly the very popular Sunday mission because of the glitch, right? Where you can get lots of extra SIGs. But the glitch is also currently present in the Monday to Saturday missions for class sparks. Now, we cannot expect the glitch to be there forever, but regardless, I just want to mention that the daily missions are much better than they used to be in the old game, even without the glitch, and that's important because you can get T4C, T5C, even if you just run through it once and explore it, even if you're not running through it again over and over again, those resources will be helpful to you for ranking up your bots, okay? And so I should definitely talk about AMs. I'm going to do a video on AMs later where I talk about the new map and talk about suggested teams. But I will just say, if you're a newer player or coming back after a long time, definitely get yourself into an alliance as quickly as you can, okay? Because AMs are a vital and very important part of this game, okay? They're probably the most important part of the game because they run weekly from Friday until Tuesday, 4 days a week. It's a great way to get to know people. You're working as a team. We do have a new map, which is really nice because we were on the old map in the old game for a few years. They can be very challenging, but we have 120 D levels. So if you're a newer player, there are plenty of teams that do lower level, mid-level AMs. And if you're not doing AMs, you're missing out on amazing rewards because you get really good rewards from AMs themselves, particularly now anyway, that the shards glitch has been fixed. But also you get rewards from AE, which is also super important because AE runs every week. You're getting, hundreds of energon every week. You're getting bot chips, you're getting shards, etc., etc. So get yourself into an alliance as quickly as you can. If you don't, you will be missing out. I promise you that, okay? AMs are super, super important, okay? So I want to address ranking up and forging a bit. I am also going to do a video on forging because I know it can be a bit confusing and complicated. I will go through that. But I want to say a few things about ranking up and forging. When it comes to ranking up, as I've said, you're going to need lots of energon to rank up your bots. The good news, of course, is that once you have access to 4 and 5 star bots, you get all of the resources you need in the store, right? You can buy all the sparks you need, but they can be quite expensive and you need lots of these sparks. So when it comes to ranking up your bots, a few things. Number 1, focus on bots that you play well with, that you are comfortable using. Focus on bots that are going to form teams, because teams are very important in terms of synergies. Focus on bots that will do well against certain mods, because we have lots of different mods in story missions, many of which are repeated. We have mods for raids, and of course, we have very dangerous mods all over the new AM map. And you want bots that will particularly deal with certain kinds of mods, and of course, to deal with certain kinds of bots, right? So the really important thing is, and it's probably even more important now than it was in the old game, is the fact that you must rank up bots that you play well with and that you're going to use a lot. Do not rank up bots because somebody else told you they're amazing. Don't rank up bots because somebody else said you should. You have to feel comfortable with them and you have to know the teams that you're using well. That is going to be incredibly important, by the way, once everyone has 5 stars, which everybody will in about a month, okay? Because 5 stars are going to take an insane amount of resources to rank up. You do not want to rank up bots that you barely ever use or that you don't like to play with. It will feel like a huge waste of time and resources, okay? So what you can do is, if you pull a bot that you don't know well or that you don't know if you like, don't rank it up. Just test it out. Right? Bring it into some missions, play with it for a while, see how you feel about it. You might be better with a certain bot than you think, okay? And it doesn't matter, by the way, if somebody tells you that the bot is a bad bot, because they don't know what they're talking about, right? This is why I don't rank bots. The only bot right now I suggest people stay away from entirely is Slipstream, just because she's so broken. She's got tons of bugs. But you can do well with just about any bot if you know what you're doing. So experiment with bots and make wise decisions when it comes to ranking up your bots, and always be thinking about teams and synergies, because they will be very, very helpful to you. When it comes to forging, as I said, I will do a video on it, but I just want to mention the same thing kind of applies to forging as it does to rank ups. Forging takes tons of time and also tons of resources, because you're ranking up and forging and trying to get your lower tier bots up to high rank and high sig and so forth to forge into your higher tier bots. Forging takes forever. So when it comes to forging up your 5-star bots, which is going to be the ultimate goal in this game, you want to be very deliberate about who you forge. Because if you take a ton of time to forge up a bot that you barely use, that's going to be a huge waste, okay? So with forging, only forge up your top bots that you use all the time. Forging up your AM team will be very important, especially if you want to be doing, higher level AMs at any point. And forge one bot at a time. Don't try to forge 9 bots at the same time, because you'll never get any of them up to forge 100. It'll take way too long, okay? Forge one bot at a time. Be patient, okay? 2 at most. Focus on your top bot or 2. Be patient with it, because once you get up to high forge levels, it does make a very noticeable difference. Because when you get let's say a 5-star rank 5 bot to forge 100, it is the equivalent of nearly another rank. So it's almost like having a rank 6 bot, which, by the way, rank 6 no longer exists. So you could actually argue that forging up 5-star bots will be even more important in the new version compared to the old version. So be very deliberate about your forging, focus on one bot at a time, and be very patient with it, because it will not happen overnight, okay? And so I want to offer some final thoughts on simply improving as a player, getting better. If you're new, if you're coming back after a long time, if you're rusty, if you haven't played for a while. There are several things I would recommend you do if you want to get better at this game, and you will want to get better if you're playing for a while. The first thing to bear in mind is that this is a defensive game more than anything. You must get your dodging game down if you want to have any success in this game. With the 3D combat system, you cannot rely on things like blocking. Blocking must be a last resort. You've got to be able to dodge attacks. You've got to be able to move around the arena well. You've got to be able to dodge attacks against the wall. You've got to be able to bait out specials. You've got to learn how to anticipate attacks. Defense is way more important than offense. Trust me on that. Because if you can't dodge attacks, if you can't anticipate what the opponent will do, it doesn't matter how good you think you are offensively, because you'll just end up dead all the time. And once you start doing even remotely difficult content, you'll end up super frustrated because you'll never last. You must work on your defensive abilities first and foremost, okay? So a great way to do that, as I mentioned, is in arenas, because arenas are very low stakes. It doesn't matter if you lose. So a great thing to do if you're a newer player is just go into arenas and don't even worry about attacking. Just dance around the arena for a while. Do everything you can to not get hit. And once you reach the point to where you're able to go long stretches of time without being hit, that's when you know you're starting to improve. Because particularly for long fights, you have to be able to go for long stretches of time without being hit. Because in the most difficult content in the game, a couple of hits or even one hit is often all it takes to kill you. So doing arenas, moving around a lot, which is very important. You can't just stand in place in this game for long. Learning how to move around. Practice your dodging game. Practice anticipating the opponent's attacks in something like arenas is a great, great thing to do. Okay? Another thing you can do is take on more challenging content as soon as your dodging game gets decent. You don't have to be a ninja, but once you start to know what you're doing, do more difficult content. If you're only doing the easy stuff all the time, you're never going to improve. I guarantee you that. But if you start to, let's say, take on the harder lanes in the story, or if you're in a in an alliance doing easy level AMs and it's just too easy for you, go to a higher level and start to challenge yourself. Because if you start doing more difficult content, you will get better as a player. I promise you that. You might suck at first. You won't be good at it. You'll get frustrated. But if you stick with it and you're fighting opponents that are a lot stronger than you, you will improve and you'll really, really enjoy it when you do. So doing difficult content is a great thing to do in this game, okay? Another thing that you can do is don't rely on very OP bots and teams. And in the new version, the thing that I'm most talking about are the Maximus teams, right? OGP has basically become the Neutronus of the game until we get Tronus back. And the Maximus teams are great. They are. But they're very overpowered, especially if you're using multiple OGPs. It's a broken synergy, right? Because your bots get way stronger. Now, look, I use the Maximus teams for AMs because it's AMs. I do high-level AMs. AMs are about working as a team, finishing the map as cleanly as possible, getting bots down without dying, etc., etc. The Maximus teams are great, and they serve a very important purpose. But use teams like that for the most difficult content only. So use other bots. Use bots you've never used before. Use bots that other people say are bad. Because if you do that, you'll also improve. If you just use massive damage bots like OGP all the time, you won't get better. I promise you that. And by the way, when we get Tronus back, which we will at the end of Act 5, don't use him for everything either. Use him for the most difficult content only. Okay? Now, I understand people have different preferences. Some people just play very casually. They want everything to be easy, and if that's you, that's fine. But if you actually are serious about the game, you play every day, you want to get better, these are some of the things that you can do to improve. But if you want to improve, you have to challenge yourself. Okay? You won't get better if everything is just really easy all the time. Okay? So those are some of the things that you can do if you want to improve. And if you're willing to be patient and test yourself, I guarantee you'll start to get a lot better. And that's one of the most satisfying things you can do in the game, by the way. Like, that makes the game really fun, is improving, doing better than you did last week or last month or whatever. So those are some of the things that I would recommend that you do. Unfortunately, we do not have any LOC type missions because those were the best training ground we ever had. I mean, they were amazing, right? Because you have these bots that are, way stronger than your bots with huge amounts of health and attack, and they were long fights. Amazing training ground. Right now, the best equivalent that we have is doing high-level AMs with 4-star bots. That is super, super hard, but obviously not everyone's doing that. Hopefully, we do get some sort of LOC-type content back, but if we don't, as I said, just do the most challenging content that you can once you have a decent dodging game down, and you will improve if you give it a serious go and you're patient, okay? So that wraps up the beginner strategy guide for the Netflix version of the game. I will leave it there. I hope that this has been helpful. I wanted to just do a sort of comprehensive overview of all the game modes. As I said, I have more specific videos on, more in-depth things that will be coming. But I hope this has been helpful to all of you. I will leave it there for now, and we will be in touch again soon. Take care.